get
It's so triggering that it
the
shows me
right.
right at the top. It makes me feel like I'm
Gotta
bound to
unmute.
be next. Oh, I'm the speaker. I think it's me.
Unmute Socrates.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. Hey, here we go. This is my first time on Twitter Spaces, so thanks for bringing me on.
Mm.
I'm actually Jake's friend. I was hoping to hop on to try to help bridge that. Um, but yeah, it's in
Okay,
like
so what's the epistemic answer?
yeah. So you were talking about the transcendental argument, which is that God is necessary to even have a foundation, to have some kind of truth or understanding. I've heard of that. I've never gone into that argument in detail. Um, I understand if you,
Okay, and so what's the
yeah.
answer on epistemology?
So, so I'm not clear why you would need to have some kind of other entity. So, so,
Now,
so,
forget all of that.
okay.
He said that he wanted to go with like a common sense approach to epistemology, and I said, how do we know that that's the right criteria of truth?
Yeah, I wouldn't rest on like a common
Okay,
sense
what would you
approach.
rest on?
Um, I would rest on. I mean, I guess it depends on how far you're trying to prove. If you're saying something like history, what happened in history, you could go with what's at the level that's verifiable. So what
Right, and
has,
so that's why
yeah,
ultimately, yeah, I was saying ultimately, it's not a question of historical claims; it's a question of worldviews.
yeah, yeah. For me, so for me, it's conceivable. Like I can imagine a world in which there is no God, but also I can have knowledge.
Well, it doesn't
And
really matter whether you can imagine that or not. What we need is an argument.
well, if it's possible for that world to exist, then it's not necessary for God to exist in
No,
order
I'm
to
not sure
have
that it is. Not sure
understanding.
that it is possible. So, what is your account of knowledge if God doesn't exist? Give me an account of knowledge.
Like a formal account, I mean, I have like a I I believe that I have memories. I believe that I have things that I believe to be true. I believe that I
Okay.
exist. There are things like, statements I can make like
Okay.
that.
Are there moral absolutes at all? Can we know them?
I wouldn't say that I hold moral absolutes. I guess depending on
Okay.
how,
So,
how
are there
formal
any
you want to get.
absolutes at all?
Are there any absolutes? I mean, I think there's things that are defined. So things like logic or arithmetic or parts of math that are defined that I think are simply true and
Okay.
don't
And
need to
on what
have
basis should we?
some
Well, on what
accounting.
basis do we believe that those things are simply true?
Given that they're defined. So if you have a
So,
definition for a
anything I
thing,
define is true.
anything undef sorry, say that again.
So, just defining it makes it true. I'm asking what makes it true.
Well, it's something isn't x isn't true because x is defined.
Right.
The
So you
right.
said it's defined. That's
No,
why
no,
my
no.
question was
So
why does that make it true?
no. So within a system that's defined, you can have things that are true based.
Okay,
Right. So
and
so
is
so if
that
I
the
have
criteria of
axioms
knowledge? Why would we accept that as our epistemic criteria?
as our as our epistemic criteria, I feel like there's some particular meaning that you have for that.
Yeah,
That I don't
like
know
the
exactly what you
criteria
mean by
problem.
that.
You're not, are you familiar with the criteria problem?
No, I'm not familiar with the criteria problem.
Now you're a philosophy man. You've got a philosopher as your profile picture here. You're not
Right.
familiar with David Chisholm or with Roderick Chisholm?
No, I've never heard that name.
Okay, well, it's called the criteria problem. So the question is, how do we have knowledge without presupposing a criteria of knowledge? And if we say that we have a criteria of knowledge, then we already assume that we have knowledge. So it's a classic problem in epistemology.
Okay. Can you give like a little bit of just a sense of what you mean by a criteria of knowledge? What would be a criteria of knowledge?
Yeah, what gives us the grounding for true versus false beliefs or propositions?
Right. Okay. 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 So that's perfect. So so let me clarify what I'm about to explain isn't the only thing that I consider knowledge, but within a subset of things that
Okay,
I
but
consider to be
and the
true.
question, but you're not understanding the question because it's
Well,
prior
I
to
th-
you just asserting these
I
things. The
think I
question is
think
how
I'm
do we?
answering the question.
The question is how do we know that that's the case?
Well, you haven't heard what my answer was yet.
It's not going to matter what the answers are because you're not answering the criteria question. You're just stating a position.
Well, I'm giving a preamble to my answer to the criteria question. Do you know what the preamble or
Is it going to tell us why we ought to believe it, or is it just more assertions?
it's the opposite of an assertion. It's giving you more of an explanation of my worldview, the degree to which what I'm about
Okay,
to
but
answer
that is that telling us
is a
why we ought
complete
to believe it,
understanding.
or is that just an assertion?
It's not an assertion, no.
Okay, so why ought we believe it?
Why ought you believe something that isn't an assertion?
Your position. Why ought we believe your position? Stop playing games.
Well, would you like to know my position?
Yes.
Okay. So, my position is that within a system that has definitions, there are things that can be true based on those definitions.
Okay.
So, if I have
Assertion.
axiom 1 and axiom 2,
Okay. Assertions. Assertions.
assertions.
Yeah. Where's the ought? Why ought we believe this is the case? You said you weren't going to just give me assertions. You said you were going to tell me why we ought to believe it.
Why ought you believe
Okay, so take an
that within.
epistemology course and stop trying to be a dork and sound like you know it. Why ought we believe this is the case? You
Okay,
said you weren't
I
going to
think
get
I'm
just
I
give me
think I might be
assertions. You said
missing
you were going to tell me why we ought to believe it.
the kind of description that why ought you believe
Okay, so take an
that
epistemology
within.
course and stop trying to be a dork
Okay.
and sound like you know it all. Go log.
and
What's
it's
up?
and it's looping. Wow. Interesting. Okay, no. I was gonna feel bad for Man, I was gonna
I
try to
make no
like
logical.
bridge the gap and like, Jake, you're not understanding. This dude actually blows. Oh my god.